Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a really eye-opening journey into the invisible architecture of the modern workplace. We're going to look closely at the realities of the glass ceiling, those hidden, everyday barriers women face, and most importantly, the data-driven solutions that can absolutely transform our organizations.
Okay, let's jump right in with a story that literally stopped me in my tracks. It perfectly captures the subtle bias women face even at the very peak of their careers. The author, Marianne Seagart, was 50 years old and incredibly accomplished. Yet, after she listed out her impressive portfolio of senior roles to a banker, he simply replied by calling her a, quote, busy little girl. No way, right? But this anecdote highlights a systemic undercrediting of expertise that operates right under the surface of our professional lives every single day.
And honestly, that kind of subtle undercrediting is exactly why the World Economic Forum estimates that full global gender parity is still a staggering 123 years away. Think about that. Women make up over 41% of the global workforce, but hold less than 29% of senior leadership roles globally. We really have to ask ourselves, why is progress moving at such a glacial pace?
Which brings us to Section 1, the reality of the gap. Let's look at the data to build a clear picture of where things actually stand.
So while hitting 11% for women CEOs in the Fortune 500 is technically a record high, a closer look reveals a stark lack of intersectional progress. Within that small slice, only 2 Black women currently lead Fortune 500 companies. That represents just 0.4% of the total. So the very top of the corporate ladder remains overwhelmingly homogeneous.
But why does this happen? Well, behind these numbers are massive systemic barriers, like the motherhood penalty. This penalty alone accounts for nearly 80% of the gender pay gap. And the financial consequences? They're massive. When you project it out, mothers earn roughly $600,000 less than fathers over a 30-year career. Meanwhile, fathers often experience a bump in pay, which really highlights a deep structural inequality in how we as a society value caregiving.
Now, it is encouraging that women now hold 29% of C-suite roles. That's a meaningful jump from 17% back in 2015. However, the climb is just far from equal. Women of color still hold a mere 7% of these top executive positions. The pipeline is quite literally losing diverse talent at an alarming rate.
Moving right into Section 2, navigating invisible workplace biases. Let's name the hidden barriers operating under the surface.
You know how people always talk about the leaky pipeline? Well, the truth is, it doesn't just leak, it breaks right at the start. We call this the broken rung, and it refers to that absolutely crucial first step up to manager. For every 100 men promoted to a managerial role, only 81 women are promoted. And for Black women, that number drops to just 54. Because of this initial bottleneck, parity for women of color is projected to be more than 44 years away.
And here's the kicker. Even when women do make it to the top, they often face what's known as the glass cliff. Research shows that women are disproportionately appointed to leadership roles during periods of crisis or really poor stock performance. So they're handed the reins only when a company is already failing. It's essentially setting them up to take the fall if they can't execute an impossible turnaround.
Then there's the authority gap. This perfectly explains why women are twice as likely to have to constantly prove their competence compared to their male peers. Because of this gap, men systematically hold 6 times more influence in group discussions. Women face constant interruptions and are evaluated heavily on their past performance, while men are much more often evaluated on their future potential. It's a completely uneven playing field.
So, what does this all mean for the people experiencing it? That takes us to Section 3, the cost of burnout.
As you can imagine, navigating these systemic biases takes a very real, heavy toll. It results in a staggering disparity in burnout. 29% of women in leadership report burnout, compared to just 19% of men. We also see massive gaps when it comes to the double shift of unpaid domestic work. For example, data out of India shows women spending 283 minutes a day on unpaid care, compared to just 37 minutes for men. The World Health Organization actually recognizes this level of burnout as an occupational phenomenon now. Yet, shockingly, over half of women don't feel comfortable discussing mental health at work.
Because of caregiving guilt and heavy cultural expectations, women often practice what we call presenteeism. This means they're showing up and working while unwell. And from a business perspective, research indicates that this drains company resources far more than taking time off, costing 2 to 10 times as much as basic absenteeism. It's just a completely unsustainable model for everyone involved.
Okay, let's pivot to some solutions in Section 4, the authentic leadership advantage.
Now that we've diagnosed the problem, how do we fix it? Researcher Brené Brown shows us that to scale daring, effective leadership, we have to strip away the armor that shuts down innovation. Armored leadership relies heavily on perfectionism, passing the blame, and constant busyness. We need to replace that with authentic leadership, a model driven by vulnerability, pure curiosity, empowering your team to use their voice, and collective learning.
And if you're wondering about the bottom line, the financial upside of this diverse, authentic leadership is absolutely massive. McKinsey found that executive teams in the top quartile for gender diversity are 39% more likely to financially outperform their peers. Diversity isn't just a buzzword, it's a profound competitive advantage that drives holistic impact across the entire business.
A cornerstone of this kind of leadership is psychological safety. This is a brilliant concept coined by Amy Edmondson, and Google actually found it to be the single most important dynamic of effective teams. It's simply the belief that a team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. It allows high-performing teams to openly surface their errors and actually learn from them without fear of punishment or blame.
Finally, let's look at the future of work in Section 5, Redefining Ambition and Success.
Right now, we're seeing a massive shift in how the workforce views their career trajectories. It's driving what's known as the Great Breakup. It's exactly why major leaders, from Sheryl Sandberg to former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, stepped down. Women are exiting corporate America at record rates. Why? Because of a lack of flexibility, the heavy, unrewarded burden of diversity labor, and seeing the visible burnout of the executives right above them. They are deliberately prioritizing their well-being over a broken system.
Arianna Huffington hit the nail on the head when she realized that we must fundamentally widen our definition of success. The old metric was defined strictly by money and power, but after literally collapsing from exhaustion, she proposed the third metric. This new metric is defined by well-being, wisdom, wonder, and giving. It's about creating sustainable, joyful lives rather than grinding until we physically break.
But look, you don't necessarily have to quit your job to find this balance. Amy Resniewski's fascinating research on job crafting shows how you can actively reshape your current role. You can alter the scope of your tasks, change who you interact with on a relational level, and even shift how you cognitively perceive your role's deeper meaning. It's a brilliant way to foster a sense of calling and resilience without ever needing to change your job title. Because make no mistake, ambition is definitely not dead. In fact, 58% of women under 30 say career advancement is increasingly important to them. They want to lead. However, they flatly refuse to accept burnout as the inevitable price of admission. They're demanding a new model where they can advance while actually maintaining a healthy work-life balance.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Ask yourself, how can you model authentic leadership to build a workplace where everyone truly thrives? Are the invisible biases in your organization actively pushing away the very leaders you need the most? I hope this leaves you with some powerful, actionable ideas to explore in your own professional life. Thank you so much for learning with me today.